So session, when the horse dies, find a new one. Let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. So very first thing I want to do is a quick tech check. So I wanted to make sure that people could see the screen. Video and sound working well for everybody, no issues. Closed captioning is enabled, excellent. Is there anything else anybody needs to, mention to either Jasmine or myself before we get going? And it's not showing me your faces right now, so if you do have something, please feel free to pop it in the chat. Looks like, for whatever reason, Zoom is giving me a hard time. Okay. All right, let's talk about who I am. So I've been working in I've been working in academic libraries since 2002. 3 community colleges and 2 state universities in Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with the Pennsylvania system, we've got state universities and state-related universities. Examples of state-relateds are Penn State, Temple. State universities are, for example, Kutztown University, Shippensburg University. I'm in Penn West, the California campus. We used to be California University of Pennsylvania. We integrated with 2 other universities here just in the last year. And some similar things happen with other schools on the other side of the state. In my, many years of being in this field, done a variety of, publications on things such as information literacy, outreach, LibGuides. It was interesting to see today that some of the people presenting at this conference are people that I've worked with in the past, including Mark this morning wrote a chapter for one of my books on outreach. So that was kind of neat to be able to see him present. And I'm now in the process of being moved into user experience in addition to instructional technology. So I'm still teaching, but UX is going to be a bigger part of my job. And that ties into kind of part of what this presentation is about. So why should you care about what we're talking about today? I always assume when I've got a presentation, I've got essentially 3 different kinds of people that are here. Some people that are not here on purpose, they just picked a random thing and either misclicked or they just wanted to see what it was about. They've got people who are very passionate about it, and then everybody else is kind of in the middle. Based on what this particular conference is about, kind of, the main focus, I'm going to assume that probably more people that are here are really interested in how you can change things up than maybe a general conference might be. And as I say here with my little robot assistant, for better or worse, I've spent a lot of time in my career having to validate the importance of the libraries I've worked at. And I assume that's true of some of the folks that are here today too. If you haven't, fantastic. But in one form or another, this has just come up over and over and over again, going back, to when I very first started all the way to today. So I set up a little bit of a thought experiment just to kind of, get you thinking today, because I'm going to be giving you a project to work on in a little bit. But the thought experiment is this: if the traditional academic library is dying, and so that's a big if, and traditional, you can define that however you see fit, whatever works for you. But if it's dying, how do you stop it? What do you do? And should you let it kind of mosey on and we'll just let things kind of play out how they will. I'm not really here to offer an opinion on whether or not the library is dying, but I think it would be fair to say at the very least it's changing. Now, to some people, this is a much more terrifying idea. Changing is more terrifying than just dying, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But let's move on to an explanation of the title. So the robot is now gone. It's been replaced by a horse. The reason for the title of this presentation is because back before I got into academic libraries, I was student teaching. I was planning to be a high school English teacher, and I was out doing my student teaching, and I realized, even though I enjoyed the students, I enjoyed I enjoyed education, it was not the right environment for me. And around the same time, somebody gave me a little book of, aphorisms and just, quotes to kind of inspire you. And one of the quotes, allegedly from John Wayne, was, "When your horse dies, get off." Um, and I thought, this is exactly what's happening to me right now. The horse has died. This is not what I want to do. So I need to cut my losses and I need to get off this horse, basically. And of course, John Wayne was allegedly also terrified of horses. So, and maybe not necessarily the best person. So who knows if the quote even applies anymore. But the bottom line is this: you don't need a zombie horse. You just need to jump off. And the other piece to that quote that I felt was missing was, you need to find a new horse. It's not just a matter of the horse is dead, find a new one, or the horse is dead, jump off. It's, you have to find something else. You have to find something else to move forward with. And that was the inspiration for this presentation title and kind of what I'm looking at. Because certainly when I started working in libraries in 2022, it was different than it was a few years earlier, and it has changed so much, despite some things staying the same, going all the way forward to today. Some people respond to that better than others. Some people have better processes for coming up with how to change and evolve. And so the hope here today is that by the time we're done, you will have a better sense of what you can do to find your new horse. Now, I'm not talking, and yay, fireworks, new horse. The goal here is not to be like, jump ship, get out of librarianship. I'm not saying find a different mode of transportation. I'm just saying, what can you do differently in your environment that you still have a horse? It's just a new one. What can you change with what you're doing? So our learning objectives that I came up with for today, I want you to come out of here being able to identify your high or low effort, low impact services or practices that may need redevelopment or even elimination. So is there stuff that's going on in your library, whether it's not taking a lot of effort or it's taking a ton of effort? Is it just low impact? And maybe you either need to change it or you need to get rid of it entirely. Same thing, identifying high or low effort things. So maybe it's easy to do, but it has a medium or high impact level. So you either need to create it because you haven't done it yet, but you've been thinking about it, or maybe there's an opportunity to redevelop it in some ways, just to make it a little bit more impactful or to reduce the workload. And then I want to talk a little bit about building strategies for getting buy-in from stakeholders, because that's always a very difficult one. As something my boss said to me recently, is some people don't have the appetite to make changes, and that is very true. And sometimes it's even you. Sometimes it's, the person who's trying to come up with a change who doesn't have the appetite to do it. So first step is really, can you get buy-in with yourself? The overall goal here, of course, we want you to be able to find a new horse, something else that can kind of carry you forward. So I want to start this off, and just so I can make sure audio and video is still coming through okay. Again, I can't see, it's not showing me people's faces right now, so I just want to make 100% sure that I'm not talking to the ether.
Audio, video, still good.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So I want to give a couple of examples of things that personal experiences that I've had. And it's going to be similar to this. I put a lot of text on these slides. The reason for this is because my experience, I used to do the old, what they called like the 4x4 method, 4 bullet points with 4 words per point. I will provide this presentation to you. As a matter of fact, I sent it to Jasmine last night, so a PDF of it should be available for you. I want you to be able to take this, and if you want to show it off to people later, feel free. So I just put some more here, just so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that. Also, my contact information is here if you'd like to reach out afterwards. So first thing I've experienced over the years, and this has been more so post about 2012. When I got to my current position, we were California University of Pennsylvania. Now we're Penn West California, Pennsylvania Western University, California. We had record enrollment for the first 3 or 4 years I was here. We were just going up and up and up and up and up. Then the reality of enrollment numbers in Western Pennsylvania, which I'm about 40 minutes outside of Pittsburgh, enrollment realities started hitting us. Birth rates in Pennsylvania are falling. People are moving out of Western Pennsylvania. It's a great part of the country to live in, but we're not generating new kids. And if you don't generate new kids, enrollment starts to drop. Some schools were really blindsided by this. Us, not as much, because we kind of accounted for it, but we didn't account enough for it. And so you start hearing these statements. I'm sure some of you have heard it. Well, you need to do more with less. Doing more with less, to me, is one of the biggest fallacies I've ever heard. It's impossible to do more with less. If you're inefficient, you certainly can tighten things up. There's always opportunities to improve inefficiencies. But beyond the inefficiencies, at some point, you must do less with less. And we faced that here. When I got here, we had, I think, 9 librarians. Before the integration last summer, which really changed a lot of the landscape here, we were down to 5. And actually one person was half-time in another department, so we were down to about 4.5. So over the course of my career here, we saw that number drop substantially. Well, with less people and less funding, we had to cut. So we started examining, what is the low impact stuff that we do that we could eliminate, even if we hated to do it. Because let me tell you, there's lots of things that I have loved doing here, and the same could be said of any of my colleagues. There's things that we love doing that the impact just wasn't there. So it was neat, it was fun, but if you're spending weeks devoting yourself to something and you're not seeing that return on investment, we had to make some hard choices. And I'll give all the credit in the world to my colleagues here. We all stayed pretty clear-eyed about things. We weren't happy about it, but we made adjustments. So I'll give you an example. Something we did here when I started that we eventually got rid of. So high effort, low impact example we had when I started here, we must have a newsletter. It was either once a month or bi-weekly. I don't remember at this point. I think we switched. But we had a newsletter called Library Matters. We had to make sure that it had about 4 to 6 pages of content. It had to have physical copies printed and distributed around the campus. We had to have it on a blog. We had to have it on our website. And the attitude was, this is essential for reaching our constituencies. Students need to read this. They need to see what databases are coming and who the new hires are in the library, and research, how to just any random thing, how to place an interlibrary loan request, whatever it is. We had at one point 2 undergraduate students, a GA, and 2 librarians working on creating content for this thing. And even with evergreen content that we could recycle semester to semester, people were putting in tons of hours making this newsletter. We started measuring clicks on our website where we posted it for people to download it or view it online, and looking at how many copies were actually taken that we physically distributed around campus. Probably not much of a surprise to you. It took us hours to produce this, and basically the only people that looked at it were people that worked in the library. So thinking about the fact that it was high effort, low impact, and kind of what was our goal here? Our goal was to get the message out of things that were going on here. And we had campus announcements. We had other ways of contacting people. So we came up with other solutions. One of the low effort, medium impact solutions we came up with was we found other communication channels. And we just went to really, what do people need to know, or what do they want to know about? So a couple simple emails about, hey, we know there's going to be databases are going to be down, EBSCO is going to be down for some reason. emails or messages that were customized for individual departments about new resources we were getting, and even just announcements on our webpage. So instead of, hey, we've got such and such going on, we just put it at the top of the webpage, and more people saw it. It took a lot less work, and it became the kind of thing where, well, it's less effort. It's maybe making a little bit more impact, but it's certainly freeing up time for people to do other things. But this was something people didn't want to let go of. I mean, it was a struggle to get people to kind of say it's okay to let go of this newsletter. Let's go with something more recent. And when I say more recent, I mean in the last 6 weeks. So if everything is important, then nothing is important. And what I'm coming from with this is you need to find some way to prioritize what is the most important things for you to be devoting your time to and your energy and your effort. So in this example, you need to know who your user population is, what they want, what they need, and how to deliver it. And your intuition is not enough. Something I've seen over and over and over again is a librarian will say, well, the students want this. Well, you don't know. You honestly don't know. You may have a reason to believe what you believe, but you don't necessarily know until you've done like an intentional, somewhat formalized attempt to really capture that information. We have spent so many years here, so many meetings talking about, well, the faculty want this, the students want this, we need to do this. Oh, excuse me. Oh, might have just been somebody's mic. You know, the community wants this. They, you know, so-and-so needs this. We spent a lot of time talking about what we think we've experienced, but that doesn't mean that we're right. And I'm guilty of it too. Everybody does it. One of my favorite examples is, well, you know, I had students in a class and blah, 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 blah. That means we need to do whatever. Well, that anecdote might be good, but the one I'm thinking of in my head is something that happened to somebody 8 years ago. 8 years ago may have been a very relevant point, but that person still, up until recently, was going back to that one data point, that you know, one little personal experience from 8 years ago, which may or may not be relevant today. So an example of something that was kind of a medium effort, low impact. We're in the process of looking at the subject guides on our website, and we use LibGuides. And there was an attitude, you know, we must have very thorough subject guides for all disciplines, classes when possible on our website, because this is an important service. Now, one of the awesome things about LibGuides is they allow you to generate a lot of content relatively quickly without a whole lot of web development expertise or design expertise. And I can certainly say there have been times in my life where I've put a lot of time into them. And once you have them set up, as long as you have a regular cadence of updates, you're pretty good. There was a strong perception here that LibGuides and those subject guides in particular were essential. And then a couple weeks back, I conducted a usability study as part of my incoming user experience role, and did user interviews as well. And according to the students we talked to, and we had 5 or 6, which is fairly standard, industry standard for something like this. Man, did we have this wrong. As a matter of fact, that could be a whole separate presentation. The information I gleaned from those user experience studies and user interviews is enough to do another hour or 2 presentation just on what we found there. The guides were essentially inscrutable to them, unless you had a student who was required to use one for class. If they were required to use one for class, it was a slightly different story. But of the students we spoke to, half of which were students that worked in libraries, because we now have 3 campuses. So we had 3 different, we're one university, 3 geographically separated campuses. We had students from each campus. We had students that worked at some of the libraries and when we're seniors, didn't know what a subject guide was. That word was meaningless to them. If you showed it to them, they might have said, oh yeah, I saw one of them once. And then be like, do you use it? No. What do you use? Well, a lot of times they had either a favorite database that they used, or they just used to go, or they just went straight to Google unless they specifically had to use library resources, because no surprise, it was easier. So we found a whole lot of stuff talking to those students. And what we saw time and time again, after we showed them some potential examples, is that they did not want a subject guide. So I'll pick communication. That's my PhD area. They did not want a subject guide that was, here's every database that could possibly be used for communication. Here's a list of, I didn't do this anyway, but some people do. Here's books in our collection you might want to look at. Here's journals that are specific to your area. Here's a bunch of stuff that's on the web that we've curated for you. They did not want that highly curated list of every possible thing. None of them did. They really kind of preferred this, well, if I'm going to use this, why can't you just give me like, 2 or 3 of the most recommended resources? And if I need help beyond that, I can ask for it. Very different from the way I was taught to do these things, but it made a lot of sense when once we actually saw how they interacted with it. Using the database is not a big concern. They could kind of muddle through that in one way or the other, but they did not want to have to pick from a list of 7 or 8 things. If they saw 7 or 8 things, they assumed the one at the top was the best one, and anything at the bottom was like a last-ditch effort kind of thing. Doesn't work that way if your list is alphabetical. So we learned a lot. So what did we decide to do as kind of a higher effort, medium impact solution? Well, we need to focus more on class integrated user instruction and less on how we used the subject guides before, which is what happens if somebody stumbles across it on our website. Because the subject guides, the mentality was always kind of, well, somebody comes to our website, they see subject guide, they're going to go into that and they're going to find the ones that they need. And we need to have that ready to go for them so they can pick everything they need. It's not what we were discovering in how they wanted to use it. There was also a suggestion to rename the guides, and that maybe we needed to go something with like research starter or starting point, almost like if you look at the pedagogy of teaching online, a lot of times they'll say if you're using a course management system like D2L or Blackboard or something, put a start here button for the students that are in there on the first day of class so they know they can click on that start here button. Basically, we were seeing something similar. They want a place on the website where they can go to it and say, I don't know what I'm doing. This is where I need to go first. And for whatever it's worth, we had a research help button that was meant to do that kind of thing and provide access to appointments and chats and email and everything else. And all but one of the students we talked to said that research help to them did not mean this is a place you go to get help with your research. It meant something else, which was shocking. All right, similar idea to what was on the last slide, but different enough that I thought it warrants its own. I said a variation of this statement to someone into a meeting a couple weeks back because it just kind of hit me. We were having a discussion about what services need to be retooled. And I said, the thing is, I know in my heart, as a librarian, we offer something that's valuable. But sometimes what we offer gets in the way of us actually providing services. And what I mean is that you can offer a million things, but if people don't take advantage of it, it's the same as offering nothing. So being kind of attached to something that's a lot of work that's not getting usage, maybe a good time to kind of just get off that particular horse and go find something else, a different way to invest your time. So like I said here, there is inherent goodness in the things that we offer to people, but offering is not the same as providing. It's one thing to say, hey, we can do this versus this is what we've actually done. So give you an example of something that happened here when I started at Cal. Didn't necessarily take a ton of effort, but it was very low impact. We offered workshops, every semester. So when I first got here, some of the workshops were specific to how to search the catalog. Um, I don't know that it was ever helpful, but it certainly wasn't when I got here. And then we started changing that up. Well, let's offer some workshops at various times during the semester. We'll do one on APA, one on Chicago, one on searching the databases, one on using Google more effectively, one on RefWorks, Zotero, whatever it is. The mentality being, hey, we're going to offer all these extra things in addition to classes and in addition to reference services, and we're just going to get a lot more students in the library, and it's going to be less formal than when they come in for a formal class. I had one colleague who would spend up to 8 hours preparing for one of these sessions, which was usually meant to last 30 minutes to an hour. You'd get no people, maybe one or two, and they'd be there because a professor was offering extra credit to attend, but not to actually do anything while they were in attendance. So they're there, they're on their cell phones, they're not paying attention. And it was just not very helpful. For the couple dozen extra students we collected, there wasn't a whole lot to show for it. So this was another thing that said, we need to focus more on class integrated user instruction and less on these kind of, a la carte things. The solution there, incidentally, was for us to connect with other faculty in the other departments and really build up the instruction program from there. And we went from a couple dozen instruction sessions a year up to, at our record shortly before COVID, we were up over, I think, 400 some a year. We really over the years increased dramatically, even as our enrollment dropped. COVID messed with that a little bit. Integration with the other universities last year messed with that a little bit. But that was a way better use of our time. We got way more face time with students because of it. So for any of the Doctor Who fans here, you'll know what this is. If you're not, this is the Doctor's ship. It has essentially unlimited space on the inside. Unlike his ship, your energy, money, space, and time are limited. Yours personally, your departments, your dean or directors, your physical library space. Even your time in an instruction session. If you've got an hour for a one-shot, the same rule applies. You need to separate your need to haves and your need to knows from your nice to haves or your nice to knows. So to give you an example of something that I've experienced in my career, not a ton of effort, low effort, but also low impact. I worked with somebody at another institution that said they refused to work in a building that did not have a physical subscription to the New York Times. Like, they threatened to quit because we were looking at the budget and it was a way to save just a little money. But all of our students wanted to access it electronically. No one was coming in and using the physical one. In a similar vein, things that I've come across, we need to maintain our physical collections. This is a library. I've heard the end of that statement, this is a library, many times in my career. Yes, we're in libraries. Libraries, I'm a firm believer in the philosophy that it is a place that allows people to connect with other people and with information, in a safe space, essentially. Library can take on a lot of different shapes. As community center, lots of different things. But even though it's still a horse, things can change. We're in a campus where we've seen enrollment declines over the past, about 10 years. More and more classes at our campus in particular have been offered online. Quite a few, actually. That was kind of CAL's hallmark, is online education. Now we've integrated with 2 other universities where it wasn't necessarily. Well, what we're finding is, on our campus especially, physical collections, we've hardly done anything with them in the past couple of years because everybody's asking for online. The students, the faculty, the assignment students are being given are all centered around online instruction. For us, the physical collection became much less important. For some of our sister schools that we integrated with, even though they were seeing the same thing on their campuses, they really did not want to give up maintaining the physical collection. But when you look at the numbers, for good or for ill, they didn't necessarily support it. So in our case, when we looked at, doing analysis for this, we all agreed physical collections are great for the people that are coming into your building. But in our case, the in-person usage just did not justify the expense or the time that it took to do collection management, either selecting materials or doing deselections and weeding. That was space and money we could devote to other things. So one of the things we did here, it was a low effort but high impact. We redirected a lot of funds to electronic databases and other distance solutions, and we reorganized our physical space as we could. Something that I think is worth mentioning is that I'm sharing these personal experiences, and they're all in the context of what I have experienced. So if you've got great physical usage at your campus, I'm not for 1 second suggesting ditch it, everything's online. I'm just providing an example of practices that we had here that we needed to adjust. So I'm not advocating everybody go out and destroy their physical collections and abandon it in favor of online. It's just, it was a reality for us. And that gets into this. There cannot be hallowed horses. Part of the title of this presentation is about dead ends, and you kind of force yourself into one, in my experience, as soon as you declare something immune or off the table. If you're saying, well, we're not touching our print journal collection, that has to stay because that is a hallmark of our physical space. That's a hallmark of what we offer to people. If you've got the people to use it, if you've got students and faculty and administrators, whoever that wants access to that stuff, by all means, if you have data that supports that, keep it going. But sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, there's things I did not want to let go of or see change because it just fundamentally went against what I thought was right or felt was right. The bottom line is that after looking at the data that we had available to us, had to change attitudes. So if you want to find opportunities for change, you have to look at everything. And again, your personal intuition or whatever your tradition is just not enough. So another example of high effort, low impact. When I started, we had librarians here at the research desk from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. And there was a strong perception amongst us that this was a very important thing to offer. And we did not want to give those hours up. Well, I'll never say that research help is not important because it absolutely is. But what we found was when we had somebody tied to the desk from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., it made attending other meetings difficult because you always had to find somebody to trade. It made working on projects at the research desk a little bit tricky. So if you had other things you had to work on, if it was sensitive information you didn't want to have up on a public screen, that was out the door. The other side to it was if you got engrossed in some project and somebody came up, you weren't looking friendly and approachable. It was kind of an issue. So what we eventually decided, which was kind of a medium effort, medium impact solution, is we started a triage system. So instead of having a librarian available at the research desk from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., we had student workers and graduate assistants who were there to be a first point of contact. They could talk to the person, find out, did they need research help or were they just going to the bathroom? And if they did need to talk to somebody, we had somebody on call, or they could make an appointment with their subject specialist and the student would help them. What we saw, and we also greatly increased our ability to provide, appointments. That combined with chat, email, and other things, the benefits for everybody were kind of, numerous. Your personal mileage may vary, but it was very, very successful for us. We had already seen our number of reference interactions declining. Something we saw happen after this change was implemented, our number of in-person reference transactions still declined, but our amount of time spent with each student increased. And if you use anything like a Reed scale or something like that to measure like what kind of help you're actually providing, instituting this change meant that we saw more time with students actually helping them with deeper research questions than when we had somebody sitting out there all the time. And there's various reasons for that. And I believe this is my last slide before the next part. So last one. It can be difficult to get buy-in for changes. Yes. And I have seen that statement stop so many things from happening. Yes, it can be difficult to get buy-in. Don't let that stop you. So we've always done it this way, you know, this famous last words, but it has a close friend that people are afraid of change. And even people that say they like change generally only mean it's the change that they want. So yeah, I love change when it's exactly what the thing that I want to happen. When it's not, I might not be so crazy about it. And again, this just as much applies to me as anybody else. I worked at an institution where I wanted to implement chat reference. This is before it was common everywhere. And I brought it up to somebody there and he said, oh, I don't think the other people here are going to want to do that. I would keep that to yourself. And I realized in talking to him, it's because he didn't want to do it. So I brought it up to somebody else who did want to do it. And then we brought that up to the group together. And then we implemented it and it got written up in the student newspaper and everybody was excited about it. Had I let it stop me because I knew one or two people were reticent, it wouldn't have gotten any legs under it. I'm not saying just go behind people's backs, but there's usually multiple ways to approach a subject and to get buy-in. So low effort, high impact things, and I mean this in a bad way, examples, not collecting the right data. If you collect the wrong data, you can be led down the wrong path on a lot of things. Not being willing to change. If you're not willing or other people are not willing, that can really stop you. And not being willing to have these tough conversations in a productive way. There are lots of things that people do not want to change. Avoiding the conversation doesn't help. So if somebody has a part of their job that they love doing, but it no longer makes sense, at some point, the conversation has to take place and say, you know what, you're putting a lot of time is being put into X. We need to find some way to redirect that to Y. Otherwise, we're, you know, offering something, or we're offering something that no one's actually taking advantage of. And so, you know, my opinion on this is that the surest path to becoming obsolete is to not be clear-eyed about the reality of your situation. Even stubborn horses can be persuaded if you approach them the right way. So if you're not getting usage of your physical collection, if your instruction program is not growing, if, you know, whatever it might be, you need to find some way to collect data on that. And that's this medium to high effort, high impact solution. You need to find some way to collect data about it. You need people to look at that data and draw conclusions from it. You need to have productive conversations about tough subjects, be realistic, and identify opportunities and take advantage of them. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in where people said, yeah, well, what if we did this? And what if we did this? And what if we did this? And then it all falls by the wayside. And 3 months later, no one's taken any action on it. I mean, you have to be, and Mark said it this morning, you have to be purposeful, you know, when you're thinking about these things. So to recap, doing more with less is a fallacy. If everything is important, then nothing is important. We offer a valuable service. Don't let what you offer stop you from providing better or different services. Your energy, money, space, and time are limited. There cannot be hallowed horses, and it's difficult to get buy-in for changes, yes, but don't let that stop you from trying. So finally, you probably need a diverse portfolio of services, providing instruction in a variety of ways, whether it's embedded librarianship, one-shot sessions, maybe on your campus workshops that you offer a few times a semester makes sense. All these different things. Just make sure that your return on investment matches the effort. If you're putting a ton of work into something and you're not getting a whole lot back, maybe that's one of those horses that you need to leave by the wayside and find a new one. Now, having said that, I am going to drop a file in the chat, and it should be a little handout. So this is a little opportunity for you to find a new horse. There's two pieces to this. The first side is just a place for you to write down some ideas. Obviously, I don't expect you to open this up and print it out or anything. You could just use Word or something. But the idea is, list some things that you currently offer. Now, this could be your library generally, or it could be you personally. And then think about some things that you might want to do, even if it's something that seems impossible. List your perception of the effort that it would take and the impact it could have. Think about the data you have or could get to defend that position. And then on the second page of that sheet, I've got low effort, low impact horses. Those are things that you might want to redevelop or eliminate. Medium to high effort and low impact horses. Those are the things that you either need to eliminate or greatly redevelop. Low effort, medium to high impact, which is redevelop or create. And then medium to high effort, medium to high impact, which is redevelop, create, or eliminate. That one can kind of fall into any categories. And then just write down some of these things, including who would your stakeholders be? What information would you have to provide to convince them? And what I'd like to do is put you into small breakout groups. And that's what the horses look like. I'd like to put you into small breakout groups so that you can kind of talk about, what's some things that you're doing currently that you think could fall under this category. Hold on, let me bring this over here. Stop sharing for just a second so I can make sure people are still here. What's something that you're doing that, you think maybe we're putting more effort into this than what we should be?